Hi, fourth grade. Today we're going to continue our realistic fiction story. The subject for today is setting. So I want to go through what our goal is going to be, and then I would like to discuss what setting is. So our goal for today is to think about the setting of the story so you can create a picture in your mind so you can truly visualize what you're writing about. But it says to think about the setting. So the first thing we need to do is figure out what setting means. Can each of you think for yourselves, what do you think the setting is? Can you brainstorm a few ideas? Take a minute. This is a definition of setting. Setting is where the story takes place or where the story is located. What is that? What does that mean? Where it takes place? That might be a town. That might be a location such as the swimming pool or the lake. It might be within your house where it's located. Maybe my whole entire realistic fiction story takes place in my bedroom. It could be any of those places. So the setting is where it takes place or where it's located. Here's a little graphic that can help you remember what setting is. Where does the story take place? We have a barn here. When does it take place? We have daytime and we have nighttime. So those are some things to consider when you are discussing setting. What we're going to do before we do anything else is try and figure out the setting, let me move this out of the way, of our story, Save Me a Seat. So think back. We have Ravi and we have Joe. They're both involved in the story. They are two of our main characters. Where does this story take place? I want you on a piece of paper in your composition notebook to list the places you think the story takes place. So pause this video and write down the places this story takes place. And then come back and we will add some of this to our own little slideshow here. Let me see. All right, I hope you've had a chance to brainstorm some ideas. Where does this take place? I'm thinking. Well, they're both in a school. So what's the name of their school? Albert Einstein Elementary. Do you see what I mean? This is the location of their story. Do you remember what city this story takes place in? I have to think about it. I think it was in New Jersey. What town? I'm going to have to check on that one for you. What town? You write down the right town. I cannot remember at the moment. Where else so far in our first 13 chapters is this taking place? Maybe somewhere within the elementary school. I know one place. I know it's in Mrs. Beam's room. That's their 5th grade classroom. And where do Joe and Ravi kind of have an encounter where they're at the same location, but they don't talk to each other? The lunchroom. Joe also has an encounter with his mother in the lunchroom. Joe and Ravi go home at one point, so their houses are also, I'm going to put housing for Joe and Ravi. And last but not least, just when we left the story off in chapter 13, they were going to with Miss Frost, the resource room. So these are all possible settings, locations of our story. But there's something else we need to consider, how much time passes. If you go back and look in your book, you'll see it goes Monday, chicken fingers, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. How many days does our story take place? It covers 5 days. So how much time passes from the beginning to the end of the story? 5 days and nights. So do you see what I mean about choosing both the location, the place, the location? So New Jersey, within New Jersey, we're at this elementary school. Within the elementary school, we're in the 5th grade classroom, and we're also in the lunchroom and the resource room. And as far as how much time passes, we have 5 days and 5 nights, starting on Monday, the first day of school, until that following Friday. I'm going to go on to the next slide here. Oops, let me get rid of that because we don't want that. See if I can get rid of it real quick. Sorry about this. All right, so now what we're going to do is we are going to listen to another story. It's called This Moose Belongs to Me. And as we're listening to it, I want you to pay attention to the settings.
This moose belongs to me. Wilfred owned a moose. He hadn't always owned a moose. The moose came to him a while ago, and he knew, just knew, that it was meant to be his. He thought he would call him Marcel. He began following Marcel, explaining the rules of how to be a good pet. Much of the time it seemed as though the moose wasn't listening, but Wilfred knew he was, mostly because he followed rule number 4 very well. Not making too much noise while Wilfred plays his record collection. Sometimes the moose wasn't a very good pet. He generally ignored rule number 7, going whichever way Wilfred wants to go. The moose had a very good sense of direction and Wilfred did not. And because the moose was particularly poor on rule number 7, subsection B, maintaining a certain proximity to home, Wilfred quickly learned to bring some string along on their outing so he could find his way back again. Sometimes the moose was an excellent pet. He had no trouble with rule number 11, providing shelter from the rain. On rule 16, knocking down things that are out of Wilfred's reach. Good work! One day, as Wilfred discussed their plans for the coming year on a particularly long walk, he made a terrible discovery. Someone else thought she owned the moose. Rodrigo, you're back! Wilfred was dumbstruck. This moose was Marcel, not Rodrigo. The old lady was mistaken, and Wilfred thought it only proper that he correct her. This moose belongs to me, he explained. And to prove it, he called Marcel. Heel! But the moose did not respond. He seemed more interested in the old lady. Good Rodrigo! Embarrassed and enraged, Wilfred rushed off for home. Fine! But in his haste, and miles from anywhere, he tripped over his string and got tangled up. And there he lay. Wilfred was beginning to get a little bit worried. It was getting late and the monsters would be out soon. He had just ruled out the last of his options when along came the moose and performed Rule 73 brilliantly, rescuing your owner from perilous situations. All was forgiven, and perhaps Wilfred admitted he'd never really owned the moose anyway. With that in mind, he and the moose reached a compromise. The moose would agree to all of Wilfred's rules, whenever it suited him. Dominic, you're back, and you brought me an apple. The end.
Well, I think that's a really cute story, so I hope you enjoyed it. Now, what I want you to do is go, after you finish watching this entire video, go into Seesaw and to the activity. And this is what it's going to look like. And you're going to brainstorm, going through the story, the settings that you found in This Moose Belongs to Me. You might find out some of these settings by the pictures we saw. Were they by the sea? Were they in the forest? Were they in the mountains? And list those ideas. Also, maybe you have some time settings you can have in there. Was it during the day? Did it start in the morning? Did it go to the evening? There is a variety. Then I want you to go to the second page of the activity, and there's a link for Harriet, You'll Drive Me Wild. Do the same thing there, and a link for How to Catch a Star. Do the same thing there as well. And by the time you're finished, you could probably have 5 different settings for each of these stories. You might have more, so feel free to write more if you have that, but 5 is your goal. So enjoy listening to the stories again, writing about the settings,